Well, gentlemen, we're here today to talk about these two beautiful creations here. So, we're going to look at the hand stitching on the rich, plush Corinthian leather here. And we're going to recognize the in-head DVD systems, video systems that you can stream directly from your phone so your kids can watch TV in the back of the seats as you're driving. We've got heated and also air conditioning option packages available for the seats in our brand new truck. I'm just joking. This is the exact same high standard of quality to which I hold myself for every one of these masterclass builds. This is masterclass build number 63, masterclass build number 62. I wanted to show the inside because very quickly we're going to put the lid on these. And I wanted the gentleman that has purchased this to see the inside of his amp, and whoever the gentleman is that purchases this to be able to see the inside of their amp. This one is for sale. This one's already spoken for. How people were able to get on the list so quickly before these were even finished is I started talking about them on Patreon, and the guys in the Patreon group spoke up, one of the gentlemen, and said, hey, I want to take that one off your hands. And I said, okay. So if you're interested in getting on the list to get one of these, just come over and join us on Patreon and we'll get you squared away. I mean, I try to build a couple of these every month. That's just kind of a way to keep everybody satisfied and provide the opportunity for people to be able to get their hands on one of these things. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the lids on these things so we know what the inside of them look like. We don't have to do anything to the inside. The output tuning tube's already all set. These have both been run. We're going to run on 15 volts. And we're going to give this a quick what fur to see what happens when I hit the what fur. Because it's all about the what fur. The what fur. And no, not wet fur, what fur. But it could be wet fur, depending on what kind of bush we're talking about. But then we can't spend too much time talking about shrubbery. Okay, so I wanted to cover this real quick. This little rubber booty is removable, and so is this handle. If you don't like this god-awful pull handle, all you gotta do is undo these two pieces of hardware, this one, and the handle comes right off. This is a Phillips, and then just a regular nylock bolt on the back. And this big handle comes right off. I just put that on there as a convenience. And the other thing is to help promote people to use the right size connector on the amplifier. To me, it's worth it to have this extra $15 or $12 part on the wire to help promote the idea that we need to run at least 4 gauge from our battery to the amplifier. That's the reason I do this. Most amp builders, if you call and you get an amplifier, they're not going to have any connector on it, and they leave you about that much power wire out of the back of the cabinet for you to figure it out. I always thought that was a little piss poor. I mean, the amount of money that we ask people to spend on these things, yes, it costs a lot of money to make these things these days. Like you'd be surprised. There's very little margin here. There's very little margin for a lot of guys. But then again, they have to cut a lot of corners to try and get that margin up. Where I've approached it from the other direction, I don't care what it costs. I just want to put the best parts in it I can. And one of those things was this here. I've had several customers come back that have bought these or bought one of these, and they're like, well, I don't like this big giant. Okay, change it out. It is what it is. Okay, so over here, let's go run around the loop here. We have our 1000 watt slug in peak in 1X, 1000 in average, 5 watt slug in reverse, frac from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. We're going to very slowly move up here to try and keep you from getting sick. We're going to use the derail bench striker 955. And we're going to use our 5 watt slug in reverse between the amplifier and the 955. And actually, while I'm pointed up there, let's go ahead and pull this out of the way so we can see the element. If I can knock the gain down enough. 5 watt slug, there we go. It's just the angle, it's a little shiny. Okay, so let's go on down here, and this is amp number 63. So we're on 15 volts, which will drop down to about 14.8 once we key it. And we're going to have the amplifier off. Let's first go over here. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. About 120 watts worth of peak drive. Now we'll come up here. We'll capture the radio and amp, or the radio and the meter in the same frame. We're going to be looking at this SWR bridge. And we're going to be looking at the reflect on the bird meter here. So this is the pass-through. It's a phrase or term that I use to describe the RF's ability to pass through the amplifier to the dummy load. Otherwise, if you were talking on your radio without the amplifier on. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Hello, come in. Very flat. Hello, 1 2 1 2. You see we have one bar here and no movement up here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to skip a step. We're going to power the amp on real quick. First, we're going to show dead key reflect. Hello, 1 2. Hello, 1 2. Very low, very stable. That's what we're wanting. That's our input. So when you're transmitting with the radio into the amplifier, that is the load the amplifier is showing back to the radio. Here's our power output. Hello, 1000 watts on the button. Here's our amp draw. Hello, 1 2. And that is on AM. So let me crop this up a little bit better. And we intentionally got this overexposed so everybody can very clearly see the amp meter, voltmeter, the volts, amps, reflect, average, bird, whatever, and peak. Now we'll go ahead and we'll go to sideband operation. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You see why we strongly suggest that you have a 100 amp power supply. We just pulled 90 amps worth of load with the amplifier. That's why we say you have to have a 175 amp Anderson clip, because a 50 amp or even the 75 amp will leave you at a deficit, right? So we'll go back to AM, turn our carrier back down for AM. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2. I get that question a lot. Well, BBI, when I watched your video, your amp gauge only showed it pulling 50 amps. Why do I need a 100 amp power supply? Reasons. That's why. Sideband, this thing pulls 100 amps. And even on AM, this thing pulls 100 amps. This is just an RMS reading meter. Let that sink in for a minute. And where we see the higher amperage load is on sideband. Okay. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Another trick to be able to tell if you have a big enough connector and a substantial enough amount of power supply feeding your amp is if your fan slows down, you've got a bad connection and not big enough power wire. It might slow down, but you only want it to slow down very little. Very, very, very little. If it drops significantly in its speed, you have a problem in your power connections. Okay, Master Builder class number 63. Let's go jump over to 62. Okay, so here we are on Master Builder class number 62. What we've changed now, because I want to show you this, is this element, which is a 5 water. We're putting 2.5 watts into the amplifier. So 2.5 watts going in. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2. That is our pass through. That is the RF's ability to pass through. So it's going from 2.5 watts. Hello, audio, 125. Let's turn this back around. Turn the amp on. Hello, 1 2 1 2. Right at our 1000 watts. We'll go back up here. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Nice and flat. Everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. Exact same test as before. Let's see if we can bang sideband out of this real quick. Put a sideband. Put a 1, 2, 1, 2. 92, 93 amps. Needless to say, we're done. Thoroughly tested. Ready to go. I want to cover this too, why I've got you all here. So, just like every other guy in the United States, I stacked these 3 meters together, and it came from comments from the YouTube land of people going, well, you know, the reason his peak meter's showing so much is because he's messing with the peak kit, so let's see it in average. So then I went out and I got another got another bird meter. And then they came along and said, well, the reason his average meter is showing so much and his peak meter is showing so much is because his output reflect is all messed up. His dummy load's faulty. Well, okay, so I went out and got yet a third bird meter, and now they're all tied together, and this is the line pickup for, you know, the spectrum analyzer and the oscilloscope. There's no way to fool all 3 of these meters, and I think everybody else in the amp building community has caught on. That's why you see so many. You see a lot of guys that have this exact same configuration on their workbench now, because it logically makes sense. Okay. The same thing goes on when it comes to these reflect meters. Now we are set in stone. Our coax length here never changes. Our voltage never changes. This is what we call an ideal operating environment, right? So if I grab this microphone and I key this, I know that I'm getting 2.5 watts carrier based off of where this knob is at in experience. Well, if I turn the dead key up, you see the dead key represented as it's going up. Now if we come down over here, that's all the way up. And that's all the way down. Take our 5 watt and we'll go forward. All the way down is just a hair below a watt. And then we can run our dead key up to about 20 watts dead key. I like to leave it somewhere about in here. Right about in there when I'm doing all my tests. I want to show this to you because when it leaves the laboratory, per se, over here, and it goes out in the world to where you're going to use it, you guys, we get this quite often, where the guy doesn't have quite the right length of coax, or something is still a little bit askew, or here, this is the main culprit that happens. So we'll turn amp number 62 back on, and the guy is running his radio. 1111111. We see 1 bar. Well, because the coax length going from the radio to the amplifier is maybe 6 inches longer, when we turn the amplifier on, and right now I have it set up for a 2 watt dead key. We start running our dead key up, and all of a sudden they freak out because of this. Hello, 11111111. I've got a 1.6 SWR, my shit's gonna explode. No. No, it's absolutely not. No, it's not. We're now dead keying like 9.5 watts into this box. 10 watts. Now we're dead keying 20 watts. Hello, 11. See how it drops to 0, drops to 0? Meanwhile, homeboy out there on the other side of the street doesn't understand that the bridge is only accurate for a couple watts on these radios. Had a long conversation with the guys at Stryker about this, and several of the very big Stryker warranty shops here in the United States. And boy howdy, it's a smart meter. But what I'm trying to encourage you guys is that if we see 1 or 2 bars, there's not a problem with the amplifier. It's not. There's no problem present. When we modulate and if it falls down, That's a good thing. As we drive the box up, the input reflect drops. That's what we're looking for. And that happens from the wrong coax length or not understanding that the SWR bridge in the radio isn't absolute. We're putting a 20 watt dead key in it and we're getting less than 1 watt worth of reflag. This bridge is overly sensitive. It's very overly sensitive. And we're reaching the point now where we can set up an input and add a couple resistors to the input of this thing. Of course, we're not going to see the great output power, but no matter where you set that radio, you're going to have a perfectly flat SWR. And that's how Texas Star and everybody did it for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. It wasn't until we had the birth of this radio that everybody started really paying attention to input reflect and really even caring. Now, yes, we live in a world where we want to have that down as low as possible. We sure do. Absolutely do. But I'm wanting to say to the end user, unless you have everything set up in a perfectly matched environment to this, we're not going to be able to replicate the results on your end perfectly. There might be a slight difference of maybe 5-10% in peak power. There might be a slight difference of input reflect by a couple percent. It's not going to hurt your radio and the amplifier is going to work just fine. It's just food for thought. I just wanted to put that on the table. Well, both of these amps are ready to go. Take off and run down the street and go take care of business. I want to say big thanks to our Patreon supporters. They're the ones that make it so that we can watch all these YouTube videos with no ads in the middle of them. There's certain people out there that don't have ad blocker, and we get it. I'm trying to make it better for everybody involved, and thank God for these guys down here, these supporters at patreon.com, to make it possible. As always, if you're interested in picking up this amplifier, give me a call, shoot me a text, send up smoke signals, whatever you got to do. This thing is ready to go. I'm asking $850 plus the ride, just like I have on all of them for like ever. Shoot me a text, give me a call. This one's ready to go. This one's already got a home. This one's ready to go. Okay, on that note, I want to say thanks Siglent, thanks McMahon, thanks Excess Power, thank you Penta Labs, thank you Bird, thank you Coaxial Dynamics, and a big thanks to every single one of you guys that still tune in to watch this stuff. I appreciate it. We're on to the next thing, which I think is a 3-tube 800. Don't quote me on that. I shall return. I'll see you, gentlemen. Thank you again. Click, click.